In the Korean underworld, they called him the Silent Dragon, a man so powerful his enemies didn't run from him, but from his shadow. But on a burning dock in Busan, the Silent Dragon collapsed, not from a bullet or blade, but from his own dying body. And with his final breaths, he made a decision that would shake every syndicate in Asia. He chose an outsider to carry his heir, an African woman, a foreigner, a maid. Her name was Abeni Dlamini, and within 6 months, half of Korea's underworld would be hunting her. Not because of what she did, but because of what was growing inside her. Hey lovelies, welcome back to Afro Soul Diaries. Click that subscribe button now to be a part of this lovely community and enjoy top-notch storytelling. Drop a comment so we can bond better. Now let's dive into today's story. Gunfire cracked through the night air like thunder. Lee Kang-soo stood at the center of chaos, his men fighting with the precision of soldiers and the ruthlessness of predators. This was territory war, nothing new for the leader of the Black Serpent Syndicate. Blood stained the concrete, bodies fell. The smell of gunpowder mixed with salt from the sea. Kang-soo moved through it all with cold efficiency, a man who'd stopped fearing death 20 years ago. But something was wrong. He felt it before he understood it. A heaviness in his chest. A tremor in his hands that had nothing to do with the cold. His vision blurred at the edges, and for a moment, the world tilted sideways. His knees buckled. For 38 years, Lee Kang-soo had never fallen. Not when his father was executed in front of him. Not when he buried 3 brothers. Not when he built an empire from blood and broken bones. But tonight, his own body became the enemy he couldn't kill. He collapsed like a puppet with its strings slashed. His lieutenant Min-ho was there in an instant, catching him before he hit the ground. The battle raged around them, but Min-ho's focus was absolute. "Boss, stay with me." Kang-soo's lips barely moved. "Get me out of here." They carried him to a waiting SUV as his men provided cover. As the vehicle sped away from the burning docks, Kang-soo stared at his trembling hands and understood with terrible clarity that he was dying. Not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but soon. His body, the vessel that had survived countless wars, was finally betraying him. And his empire, built over 2 decades of calculated violence, would crumble without an heir. 3 weeks later, a phone rang in a cramped apartment in Cape Town. The woman who answered had no idea she was about to enter the most dangerous house in South Korea. Her name was Abeni Dlamini, 26 years old. No visa, no protection, no idea what she was walking into. All she knew was what the voice on the phone had promised: enough money to save her dying mother. The car ride through the Korean mountains felt endless. Abeni sat in the back of a black sedan, watching unfamiliar landscapes blur past the window. Pine trees, mist, roads that wound like serpents through valleys she couldn't name. The driver hadn't spoken a word to her. When the mansion appeared through the trees, Abeni's breath caught. It was beautiful in the way dangerous things often are. Sleek, modern, perched on a cliff overlooking the sea. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the gray sky. Everything about it whispered wealth and power. A man waited at the door, tall, expressionless, dressed in a dark suit that probably cost more than Abeni had earned in her entire life. His eyes assessed her with the cold efficiency of someone trained to identify threats. "Abeni Dlamini?" His English was precise, accented. "Yes. I am Min-ho. I manage security for this household. Follow me." He led her through corridors that felt more like a museum than a home. White marble floors, abstract art on the walls. Everything perfect, untouchable, cold. Min-ho stopped outside a heavy wooden door. "You will meet him now. When you speak to him, you will show respect. You will not ask unnecessary questions. You will remember that you are here at his discretion. Do you understand?" Abeni nodded, though her heart was racing. Minho opened the door. The room beyond was dark except for the light filtering through sheer curtains. A man sat in a leather chair facing the windows, his back to the door. Even seated, he commanded presence. "Leave us," the man said without turning. Minho bowed slightly and closed the door behind him. Silence stretched between them. Finally, the man spoke. "Do you know who I am?" "No," Abeni answered honestly. "Good." He turned then, and Abeni saw his face for the first time. Lee Kang-soo was younger than she expected, perhaps in his late 30s. Handsome in a severe way, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to see through skin and bone. But there was something else in those eyes, something tired, something dying. "I am told you need money," he said, "that your mother is ill." "Yes, I can provide what you need. Medical care, the best doctors. Enough money to ensure she never wants for anything again." Abeni's pulse quickened. "What do you want in return?" Kang-soo studied her for a long moment. "First, I want you to understand where you are. This house belongs to the Black Serpent Syndicate. I lead that syndicate. Do you know what that means?" Abeni shook her head. "It means I am a criminal. It means the people in this house have done terrible things. It means that if you stay here, you will be complicit in a world most people never see." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need you to make an informed choice." He stood slowly, wincing slightly as he did. "I am dying. I have perhaps 6 months, maybe less. I have no heir, no son to inherit what I've built, and without an heir, everything I've created will be torn apart by rivals." Abeni's stomach tightened. She began to understand where this was going. "I am married," Kang-soo continued, "but my wife is barren. My sisters-in-law live in this house, but I do not trust them. I have a fiancé, a woman the syndicate arranged before my marriage, but she has her own ambitions." He stepped closer. "I need someone with no connection to this world, someone with no agenda, someone desperate enough to say yes and smart enough to stay silent." "You want me to have your child?" "Yes." The word hung in the air between them like smoke. Abeni's mind raced. This was insane, impossible, dangerous beyond measure. She should run. She should say no. But an image flashed through her mind, her mother, frail and fading in a hospital bed they could barely afford. Her sister, working 3 jobs and still drowning in debt. "If I say yes," Abeni whispered, "what happens after the baby is born?" "You will be free to leave. The child stays with me. You will have enough money to start a new life anywhere in the world." "And if I say no?" Kang-soo's expression didn't change. "Then you will leave this house tonight with enough money for your airfare home. Nothing more. Nothing less." Abeni closed her eyes. She thought of home. She thought of her mother's voice. She thought of the prayers she'd whispered every night since childhood. When she opened her eyes, she said, "Yes." If you're invested in this story, hit that subscribe button because what happens next will shock you. And drop a comment below telling me what you would do in a Beanie situation. Now, let's continue. Kang-soo nodded once, as if he'd expected nothing less. "Tomorrow, you will meet the others in this house. You will be introduced as a caretaker. No one will know the real reason you're here except Minho and myself. Do you understand?" "Yes." "One more thing." His voice dropped lower. "There are people in this house who would kill you if they knew. You will be careful. You will be silent. And you will trust no one but Minho." That night, Abeni lay in the guest room Kang-soo had provided, staring at the ceiling. The bed was the softest she'd ever slept in. The room was larger than her entire apartment in Cape Town, and she had never felt more terrified in her life. The next morning, Minho escorted her to breakfast. The dining room was vast, with a table long enough to seat 20 people. 3 women sat at one end, picking at their food with the bored elegance of those who'd never known hunger. They looked up as Abeni entered. The oldest was Sumi, Kangsu's wife. She was beautiful in the way expensive things are, polished, preserved, utterly cold. Her eyes swept over Abeni like she was examining something distasteful. "This is the new caretaker?" Sumi's voice was sharp, dismissive. "Yes," Minho said simply. Beside Sumi sat her two younger sisters, Nari and Ariam. Nari didn't even look at Abeni. She looked through her like she was furniture, like she was nothing. "Another one," Nari sighed to her sister. "How long do you think this one lasts?" But it was Ariam who made Abeni's blood run cold. Ariam smiled, but it was the wrong kind of smile. She walked up to Abeni, took her hand gently, and whispered like they were sharing a secret. "I hope you're not afraid of heights. The last caretaker fell from the balcony. Such a tragedy." She patted Abeni's hand and walked away humming. That wasn't a warning. That was a preview. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of tension and fear. Abeni performed her duties, cleaning, organizing, staying invisible. But she felt eyes on her constantly, watching, assessing, waiting. Late one night, Abeni heard a sound she didn't recognize, crying. She followed it to Kangsu's room and found him hunched over the edge of the bed, shoulders shaking, a photograph clutched in his trembling hand. He didn't see her at first. When he did, his face twisted with shame. "Get out," he rasped. But Abeni didn't move. She walked closer, slowly, and saw the photograph. A young boy, maybe 7 years old, smiling in front of a birthday cake. "Who is he?" she asked softly. Kangsu's voice cracked. "My son." Abeni's heart stopped. "He died," Kangsu continued, barely audible. 6 years ago, kidney failure. I had all the money in Korea and I couldn't save him." He looked at her with eyes that held nothing but grief. "That's when I stopped believing in anything." Abeni didn't have words. She simply sat beside him in the dark and let the silence speak instead. Something shifted between them in that moment. Something neither of them expected. He wasn't just a crime lord anymore, and she wasn't just a transaction. 3 days later, Kangsu called Abeni to his office. When she arrived, Minho was there, along with a woman in a white coat, who introduced herself as Dr. Park. "We begin the procedure today," Kangsu said. No preamble, no gentleness. The IVF process was clinical, cold, efficient. Dr. Park explained each step in mechanical detail. Abeni signed papers she barely understood, in languages she couldn't read. When it was over, Dr. Park packed her equipment and left with a curt bow. Kangsu stood by the window, his back to Abeni. "If this works," he said quietly, "everything changes. For both of us." "I know. You will be in more danger than you can imagine. I know that too." He turned to face her. "Why did you really say yes? And don't tell me it's just the money." Abeni met his gaze. "My mother taught me that family is everything, that you sacrifice everything to protect the people you love, even if it destroys you." She paused. "I think you understand that." Something flickered in Kangsu's eyes. Recognition, respect, maybe even kinship. "Yes," he said softly. "I do." 2 weeks later, Dr. Park returned. The pregnancy test was positive. Abeni stood in the medical room, staring at the results, and felt the weight of the world shift onto her shoulders. Inside her, a life was forming. A life that half of Korea would want dead. When Kangsu heard the news, his reaction surprised her. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He simply closed his eyes and exhaled. A man granted one last chance at redemption. "Thank you," he whispered. It was the first time she'd heard him say those words to anyone. That night, Abeni stood on the balcony overlooking the sea. The wind was cold, the stars were hidden, and somewhere inside her, a heartbeat was forming. She dialed her sister's number with trembling fingers. Abeni, is that you? Yes, it's me. Where are you? We haven't heard from you in weeks. I'm fine. I'm working. Working where? You sound strange. Abeni closed her eyes. I'm in a beautiful house by the ocean. Good food, kind employers. Everything is fine. Every word was a lie. But what could she say? That she was carrying the child of a dying crime lord? That women in this house wanted her dead? That she might never come home? Tell Mama I love her, Abeni whispered. Abeni, you're scaring me. I have to go. I love you. She hung up before her voice could break. The ocean roared below, and Abeni wondered if she would ever see home again. The first assassination attempt came on a Thursday. Abeni was walking down the main staircase, carrying fresh linens to the guest rooms. The marble steps gleamed under the afternoon light. Everything seemed normal. Then her foot hit something slick. Oil. Someone had spread oil on the steps. Abeni's feet flew out from under her. She tumbled forward, the world spinning, her hands grasping desperately for the railing. Strong hands caught her. Minho had appeared from nowhere, his grip iron firm, pulling her back from the edge. Are you hurt? His voice was sharp with urgency. Abeni shook her head, but her whole body trembled. Minho examined the steps, his jaw tightening as he saw the oil. He pulled out his phone and made a call, speaking rapid Korean. Within minutes, the household staff was assembled. Minho questioned them one by one, his voice cold and methodical. No one admitted to anything. No one saw anything. When Kangsu learned what happened, his rage was quiet and terrible. He gathered everyone in the dining room, Sumi, Nari, Arium, the entire staff. Abeni is under my personal protection, he said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Anyone who harms her harms me. Anyone who threatens her threatens everything I've built. His gaze swept across each face. The next person who tries will not be questioned. They will simply disappear. The room went deathly still. But Abeni saw it. The flash of defiance in Arium's eyes, the subtle smirk on Nari's lips. The message was clear. They weren't afraid. They were just getting started. That night, Abeni couldn't sleep. Every sound made her flinch. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. She pressed her hands against her stomach, against the life growing inside her, and whispered words she hadn't spoken since childhood. A prayer her mother taught her, in Zulu, in the language of home, in Kosi, Ngisis. Lord, help me. She said it again, and again, until her voice broke, because she realized something terrifying. She wasn't just protecting herself anymore. She was protecting someone who couldn't run, someone who couldn't fight, someone who depended entirely on her survival. And in this house of serpents, survival was not guaranteed. The next attempt came 3 nights later. Abeni woke to the smell of smoke. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. Then she heard the crackle of flames, saw the orange glow beneath her door, and terror flooded her veins. Fire. She ran to the door, but the handle was burning hot. She stumbled to the window, looked down at the 3-story drop to the garden below. She was trapped. Abeni! Minho's voice cut through the chaos. The door burst open and he was there, a wet towel wrapped around his face. Come. Now. He grabbed her hand and pulled her through the smoke-filled corridor. Flames licked at the walls. The heat was suffocating. They made it to the stairwell, down 2 flights, and out into the garden. Abeni collapsed on the grass, coughing, gasping for air. Behind them, fire crews arrived. The flames were extinguished within the hour. The damage was contained to the east wing. Kangsu stood in the garden, watching the smoke rise, his expression unreadable. When the fire marshal delivered his report, his words confirmed what everyone already knew. The fire was deliberately set. Someone had poured accelerant in the corridor outside Abeni's room. Kang-soo made a decision that night. "Pack your things," he told Abeni. "We're leaving." "Where?" "Somewhere they can't reach you." They left at dawn. 2 SUVs, 6 armed guards, Min-ho at the wheel of the lead vehicle. Kang-soo sat beside Abeni in the back, his hand resting protectively over hers. "Where are we going?" she asked. "A safe house, near the coast. No one knows about it except Min-ho and myself." A young guard named Taemin drove the second SUV, keeping pace behind them. He was the only one in the household who had ever smiled at Abeni, the only one who treated her like a human being instead of an inconvenience. They were 2 hours into the drive when everything went wrong. A black sedan came out of nowhere, ramming into the side of Taemin's vehicle. The SUV spun out, crashed through the guardrail, and tumbled down the embankment. "Taemin!" Min-ho screamed. More vehicles appeared, 3, 4, 5, surrounding them like wolves. Gunfire shattered the rear window. Abeni screamed, ducking low. Kang-soo covered her body with his own. "Get her out of here," Kang-soo shouted to Min-ho. "Whatever it takes." Min-ho drove like a demon, taking turns at impossible speeds, pushing the SUV beyond its limits. Behind them, the black sedans kept pace. They careened onto a narrow road leading to the docks. The sea appeared ahead, dark and churning. Min-ho skidded to a stop. "Out! Now!" They ran toward the pier where a small speedboat waited, part of Kang-soo's contingency plans. The black sedan screeched to a halt behind them. Men poured out, weapons drawn. Min-ho pushed Abeni toward the boat. "Go, I'll hold them." "No." Abeni grabbed his arm. "Come with us. Someone has to buy you time." Min-ho looked at Kang-soo. "Get her to safety. That's an order I'm giving you, boss." Kang-soo's jaw clenched. For a moment, emotion flickered across his face. Then he nodded once, sharply. Min-ho turned and opened fire, giving them the seconds they needed. Kang-soo started the boat's engine. It roared to life. As they pulled away from the pier, Abeni looked back and saw Min-ho standing alone against a dozen armed men, firing with calm precision. Then the distance swallowed him, and she didn't see what happened next. She didn't need to. The boat cut through the dark water. Behind them, more boats appeared, giving chase. "Hold on!" Kang-soo pushed the throttle to its limit. They weaved between fishing vessels, under a bridge, through waters Kang-soo clearly knew intimately. But their pursuers were relentless. Then Kang-soo gasped. Abeni saw him clutch his chest, saw the pain twist his features. "Kang-soo? What's wrong?" "Nothing. I'm fine." "You're not fine. You—" He collapsed at the wheel. The boat veered wildly. Abeni lunged forward, grabbing the steering wheel, her heart hammering. She had no idea how to drive a boat. The pursuers closed in. She checked his pulse, weak, fading. Panic threatened to overwhelm her. But beneath the panic, something else stirred, something fierce and protective. She looked at the boats behind them. She looked at the unconscious man beside her. She looked at the open sea ahead. And she made a choice. She pushed the throttle forward and aimed for the darkness. Before we continue with what happens next, if you're on the edge of your seat right now, smash that like button and let me know in the comments whether you think they survive this. Your engagement keeps these stories coming. The next 3 days blurred together. Abeni didn't remember how she made it to shore. She had vague memories of the boat running aground, of dragging Kang-soo's unconscious body onto sand, of screaming for help. A fisherman found them, an old man who asked no questions, just helped. He brought them to his village, hidden in a cove that maps had forgotten. His wife tended to Kang-soo with herbs and prayers. "Will he live?" Abeni asked. The old woman shrugged. "Only the sea knows." For 3 days, Abeni sat beside Kang-soo's unconscious form, refusing to leave his side. She held his hand. She whispered prayers in Zulu and broken Korean. She willed him to live. On the 3rd day, his eyes opened. "Abeni?" She sobbed with relief. "You're alive. You're alive." Kangsu tried to sit up and winced. Where are we? Safe, for now. He looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. You saved me. You saved me first. They stayed in the village for 2 weeks. The old fisherman and his wife asked for nothing in return, though Kangsu made sure they would be compensated generously. During those 2 weeks, something changed between Abeni and Kangsu. The dynamic shifted from transaction to something deeper. He taught her Korean words. She taught him Zulu phrases. He told her about his childhood, about a father who ruled through fear, about brothers who died too young, about the weight of inheriting an empire he never wanted. She told him about Cape Town, about her mother's garden, about her sister's laugh, about the life she'd left behind. One night, sitting on the beach under stars that felt like witnesses, Kangsu said, "When the baby is born, you don't have to leave. You could stay. If you wanted." Abeni looked at him, startled. Why would I stay? Because, he struggled with the words, because I think we could be something other than what we started as. Her heart ached with a feeling she couldn't name. Kangsu, your world is... I know what my world is, but maybe we could build a different one. Before Abeni could respond, the old fisherman ran down to the beach. Television, he said urgently. You need to see. They followed him to his small house, where a battered TV played the evening news. Abeni's blood turned to ice. The reporter stood in front of Kangsu's mansion, or what was left of it. Burned, destroyed. Crime scene tape everywhere. The body of Lee Kangsu, known crime lord and leader of the Black Serpent Syndicate, was recovered from the wreckage. Authorities believe this was a coordinated attack by rival organizations. They think you're dead, Abeni whispered. Kangsu stared at the screen, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he smiled. Good. The news changed everything. If the world thought Kangsu was dead, they had a chance. A chance to disappear. A chance to start over. But first, they needed to get out of Korea. Kangsu made a single phone call to a contact he trusted, a man who owed him a life debt. Within 2 days, they had new identities, new passports, and passage on a cargo ship leaving for Southeast Asia. What about your syndicate? Abeni asked. Your empire? Let it burn, Kangsu said quietly. I spent 20 years building something I never wanted. Maybe it's time to build something I choose. He placed his hand over her stomach, where their child grew. Maybe it's time to build a family instead. But the universe had one more trial waiting for them. On the night before they were scheduled to leave, a yacht appeared in the cove. It was sleek, expensive, out of place in the humble fishing village. And standing on the deck, backlit by the setting sun, was a woman Abeni had never seen before. She was beautiful, tall, elegant, dressed in designer clothes that screamed wealth and power. Her eyes were cold as winter. Kangsu, she called out. I knew you weren't dead. You're too stubborn to die. Kangsu stepped forward, positioning himself between the woman and Abeni. How did you find me, Jinhee? Did you really think you could hide from me? I have eyes everywhere. She looked past him to Abeni. So this is her. The African woman. The one carrying your bastard. Leave. Now. Kangsu's voice was deadly quiet. Jinhee laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Leave? Kangsu, I've waited 7 years for you. 7 years of being the perfect fiancé, playing the syndicate's games, positioning myself to stand at your side. And you throw it all away for her? I never asked you to wait. No, but I did anyway, because I believed in what we could build together. Her expression hardened. But now I see you've made your choice, so I'll make mine. She raised her hand. Armed men emerged from below deck, weapons aimed at the beach. You can't kill me, Jinhee, Kangsu said. If you do, you lose everything. The syndicate won't follow you. They'll tear themselves apart. You're right. I can't kill you. Jinhee's gaze shifted to Ebony. But I can kill her. And the child. And then you'll have nothing. Just like I have nothing. The old fisherman and his wife had already fled at the first sign of danger. It was just Kang-soo and Ebony on the beach, outnumbered and outgunned. Kang-soo stepped in front of Ebony. If you want her, you go through me first. Happily, Jinhee gave the signal. The armed men raised their weapons, and then the sound of helicopter blades cut through the air. Everyone looked up. 2 military helicopters appeared over the ridge, spotlights blazing. A voice boomed through a loudspeaker, speaking in Korean. Jinhee's face went pale. No, this isn't... The helicopters landed on the beach. Soldiers poured out, surrounding the yacht, weapons drawn. From the lead helicopter, a man emerged. He was older, distinguished, wearing the insignia of a high-ranking military official. He walked directly to Kang-soo and bowed deeply. Sir, we received your message. Kang-soo exhaled. You took your time, General Park. Traffic, the general said dryly. He turned to Jinhee. Kim Jinhee, you are under arrest for conspiracy, attempted murder, and about 15 other charges I haven't finished counting yet. Jinhee's composure finally cracked. You can't do this. I have connections. You have nothing, Kang-soo said quietly. I spent the last 2 weeks making sure of that. As soldiers moved to apprehend Jinhee and her men, she locked eyes with Kang-soo one last time. I loved you, she said. No, Kang-soo replied. You loved what I represented. You never knew me at all. Jinhee was led away in handcuffs. General Park turned to Kang-soo. The cargo ship leaves in 3 hours. These are the last favors I owe you. After tonight, you're on your own. I know. Thank you. The general looked at Ebony with curiosity. Is she worth it? All of this? Kang-soo didn't hesitate. Yes. 3 months later, in a small coastal town in Malaysia, Ebony went into labor. The local hospital was nothing like the sterile medical facilities of Korea. The equipment was old, the air conditioning barely worked, and the staff spoke a mixture of Malay and English that Ebony only half understood. But Kang-soo was there, holding her hand, whispering encouragement. The pain was excruciating. Ebony screamed. She cried. She cursed. She prayed. And through it all, Kang-soo stayed beside her, his presence steady and unwavering. When the baby finally came, a boy, healthy and screaming with the fury of the living, Ebony saw something she'd never seen before. Kang-soo wept. Not the silent tears of grief she'd witnessed in his mansion. These were different. These were tears of joy, of redemption, of second chances. What should we name him? Ebony asked, exhausted and elated. Kang-soo looked at his son, this tiny, perfect thing that shouldn't exist, that defied every odd. Hope, he said softly. We'll name him Hope. They lived simply in Malaysia. Kang-soo used his remaining resources to build a quiet life, a small house by the ocean, far from the violence of his past. He taught their son to speak Korean and Zulu. He taught him to be kind, not ruthless. He taught him that family was worth more than empires. Ebony watched Kang-soo transform from the silent dragon into something gentler. He never forgot who he'd been, but he wasn't ruled by it anymore. He woke early to make breakfast. He changed diapers. He sang lullabies in a voice that once commanded armies. When Hope was 2 years old, he took his first steps. When he was 3, he spoke his first full sentence in 3 languages. When he was 4, he asked his parents to tell him the story of how they met. Kang-soo and Ebony looked at each other, smiled, and said, "Maybe when you're older." When Hope was 5 years old, Ebony finally received the news she'd been waiting for. Her mother's treatment was successful. She was in remission. "We should visit," Kang-soo said. "I'd like to meet her." So they traveled to Cape Town. Three people who shouldn't have been family, arriving in the place where Abeni's story began. Her mother opened the door and saw her daughter, the man she'd chosen, and the grandson she didn't know existed. She looked at Abeni for a long moment, taking in the changes, the strength in her daughter's eyes, the way Kang-soo stood protectively beside her, the way hope clung to both his parents with equal trust. "Are you happy?" her mother asked simply. Abeni glanced at Kang-soo, at hope playing nearby, at the life they'd built from impossible choices and desperate gambles. "Yes, Mama," she said. "I am." Her mother embraced her then, held her tight, and whispered, "Then that's all that matters." They spent 2 weeks in Cape Town. Kang-soo met Abeni's sister, Thandiwe, who'd finished university with the money Abeni had sent. He met her cousins, her neighbors, the community that had raised her. He saw the township where she'd grown up, the church where she'd prayed, the streets where she'd learned to survive. "Now I understand," he told her one night as they walked along the beach. "Now I understand where your strength comes from." In the Korean underworld, they still told stories about the silent dragon, the crime lord who died in flames, whose empire crumbled in his absence. They didn't know he was alive. They didn't know he'd chosen a different legacy, and that was exactly how he wanted it. Because Lee Kang-soo had learned something that all his power and violence never taught him. The strongest empire isn't built on fear. It's built on love. And the heir he desperately sought, the one that would preserve his legacy, wasn't just the son who bore his blood. It was the family he'd chosen, the woman from Cape Town who said yes when she had every reason to say no, the boy named Hope who would never know the weight of criminal inheritance, and the quiet life they built together, far from serpents and syndicates, on a beach where the waves whispered of second chances. This was the story of how Abeni Dlamini went from washing dishes in back alley restaurants to carrying the heir of the Black Serpent Syndicate, and why half of Korea's underworld wanted her dead for it. But more than that, it was the story of how two people from different worlds found each other in the darkness and chose to build something light. It was the story of impossible choices and their unforeseen consequences. It was the story of the silent dragon who learned to speak. And it was the story of how sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to fight. It's to simply survive. Together. Years later, when Hope was old enough to understand, they told him everything. They didn't sugarcoat it. They didn't hide the violence or the danger or the choices they'd made. They told him about Minho's sacrifice, about Taiman's death, about the people who'd tried to kill him before he was even born. "Why?" Hope asked. "Why did you risk everything?" Kang-soo looked at his son, this miracle child, this second chance he'd never deserved. "Because some things are worth dying for. And you, your mother, this family, you're worth living for." Hope thought about this for a moment. What happened to Minho? Kang-soo's expression grew distant. "I don't know. I'd like to think he survived. That somewhere, he found his own second chance." "Do you miss it?" Hope asked. "The power? The empire?" "No," Kang-soo said without hesitation. "I don't miss it at all." And he meant it. Because every morning when he woke up next to Abeni, every evening when he watched Hope play on the beach, every moment of this quiet, ordinary, beautiful life, he felt something he'd never felt in all his years of power: peace. If this story moved you, if it kept you watching until the very end, do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel because I have more incredible stories coming your way. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. And comment below telling me what part of this story impacted you the most. Your comments fuel my passion for storytelling. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.